All right, so the next step is to stamp the whale. So the best thing to use is a stamp positioner. So I've got this one here, and I've got my magnets here that I'm going to use to hold my paper down. And you definitely want to be using those magnets, because sometimes when you're positioning your stamps, they can kind of stick to the paper and it kind of pulls it up a little bit. So you want to have those magnets there to help. It's not going to completely stop it from pulling up, but it is going to hold it in place a little bit better. So make sure that your stamps are clean if you've used them before. You don't want to have residual ink sitting on there and having it transfer to the back of your paper. So I'm just going to position the first one, close it. Now I have mine set to rubber because this particular positioner can do either rubber or clear. So I want to change it to the clear side so that it's the right thickness for clear stamps. I'm going to use Oxide ink for this because Oxide ink is more opaque, and I want it to be, I want the whale to be more opaque. You could use regular distress inks on there, but I just wanted the opaque look of the oxides. So I'm just making sure to stamp it and get a good impression. It's mostly good, but I'm going to go and ink my stamp up a second time and restamp it. Now this is the beauty of the positioner, because you don't need to worry about whether it's stamped or whether it's going in the exact same spot because you haven't moved anything. It's going to go in the same spot. If you were to use a block and try to place it, it's a little bit harder to make sure that everything is positioned perfectly. Now because there's oxide on there, it's going to take a little bit for it to dry. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my stamp. I've just got a baby wipe here. You can use a wet cloth as well. These inks are water soluble, but I want to make sure that my stamp is completely clean before putting it back in the package, because I am going to use it in a little bit with some Versamark ink, and I don't want to have any ink left on my stamp there. Now this is still slightly, so I'm using my heated tool to dry the ink. You don't want to use the heat gun because it's just too hot. This is just to help dry the inks off a little bit. And it's mostly dry, it's just to get that last little bit. Because if I go in with the next color and it's not quite dry, some of that might pull up a little bit. So I do have some media grip in my positioner here, and that's just to help grip the paper to hold it in place a little bit better. I also find, especially with clear stamps, that that slight cushion, I mean it's really thin so there's not a lot of cushion, just helps give it a better impression, but this heat tool isn't going to hurt it at all. All right, now my next stamp here, and if you're ever in doubt when you get these color layering stamps, it shows you right on the back which one goes next, so there's not a whole lot of guesswork to it. So my next one, and this is the beauty of having a positioner, having clean stamps, is you can take your time to position it exactly how you want it to be. And then when you've got it where you want it to go, you just close your positioner here. And then you don't need to worry about stamping perfectly in the exact position because you know that it's positioned right. And if we've got a little bit of spotting there, just gonna stamp again. I actually really quite like that texture on here. Sometimes that happens because your stamps are new and you haven't conditioned them yet. I find it just happens with these oxide inks, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry that ink and then I'm going to do it one more time. It's mostly covered, but, and especially for this whale, I personally kind of like it. I think it looks a little bit more natural like this. But this is where having a stamp positioner totally helps, because you can just re-stamp it as many times as you want. Do it one more time. last little bit in there. I'm just going to clean my stamp off and put it away while that dries a little bit, and then there we go. And the very last one here is the whale's mouth. Now this one happens to have some ink on it from before. Dry that a little bit and then re-stamp it. Most of it took. I find stamping on top of oxides is when I have this issue where not all of it is taking. But that's one of the reasons why I love having a positioner, that I can just reposition it. Better. All right, clean this off. I think one of the times I used this, I used a permanent ink on here, which is why it shows the ink. Clean this off. And then the very last step for the whale is we're going to put that solid form back on top of it. And we're going to stamp it with some Versamark ink and emboss it with clear powder to give the whale the clear, shiny look there. So grab the Versamark ink. Paper lifted up a little bit, but if you were within that corner, when you push your paper in, if you push it right into that corner, then you know that if by chance some of it lifts up, and it lifts up because this ink is extra sticky. If you have your paper in the corner to start, you just know that pushing it right back into that corner is going to put it right back in place. I'm going to take some clear powder here. And melt it with a heat gun. Now, if you wanted that clear layer to be extra thick, while this is still hot, you can put some more powder on it and melt it again. But I'm just going to leave this like that. I'll see you in the next video, and we will add the white foamy stuff, the sentiment, and put our card together.